Hey kids, Missenden Flyer here, hope you're well, and welcome to part 2 of bike news for March 2019. If you haven't seen part 1, do go back and watch that first, because I've got 2 more papers now to go through, covering the news from the UK bike press for, as I say, March 2019. So stick around and stay tuned. Alright, we'll crack on then with this news review, and then at the end of the review I've got a few parish notices, a bit of news about what's going on in on the Missenden Flyer channel coming up over the next few weeks as well that you might want to stick around for at the end. Alrighty then, so to the first story of this part 2 of the news review. First one I pulled out here, the bagger version of the Goldwing has cropped up. Let me just get rid of that. Oh, PCs, eh? There we go. So you may recall, or you may have seen a video I did probably about a month or so ago now, where I rode the Honda Goldwing and I absolutely loved it. Not a sort of bike that I thought that I would be well into. Cruisers are something I'm just kind of starting to appreciate, and the Goldwing is just the king of cruisers, isn't it? An absolutely massive bike, very expensive, but I really loved the standard Goldwing. Now they brought out this version, the bagger, and this is to compete with the likes of the BMW K1600 GT bagger. They've got a bagger version of the GTL as well, I assume. This one comes in at £22,299, so very expensive, but significantly cheaper than the standard Goldwing. But you still get lots of the good stuff that I liked with the Goldwing. So you still get the 1833cc 6-cylinder super smooth engine, still puts out 124 brake horsepower and 125 foot-pounds of torque. And the good news is 40 kilograms less than the Big Brother vanilla Goldwing. So definitely worth considering if you're in that sort of market. I think it looks quite nice. Not as comfortable looking for your pillion when you just look at the back end of it here, because of course you've lost all the top boxes. The side cases are slightly different, and you haven't got the armrests and so on that you've got on the standard bike. But if it's anything like the normal Goldwing to ride, which I'm sure it's exactly like, then this is going to be an absolutely stonking bike. Don't suppose I'll get a chance to ride one. They're quite rare to get as demos as Goldwings, let alone the bagger version. But if I do get a chance, I'll definitely ride it. Incredible bit of kit, and don't poo-poo these things. If you've not ridden one, have a go on one before you, make your choice about whether you like them or not. Because it blew me away within 30 seconds of riding the Goldwing. I thought this is the best bike I've ever ridden, but the standard one is about 30 grand according to the Honda website. So expensive proposition for a motorcycle. Alrighty. Okay, next story here, and it's a letter from somebody called Mike Johnson. NC750 and all that jazz is the headline, and this is the letter that I alluded to in part 1. It's actually feedback from my TMF blog off column that I'd put in the previous paper, and basically what Mike is saying is that I didn't compare like with like. He's saying that he's got a Honda Jazz, and if you compare the running cost of that against a Honda NC750S, the maths works out differently. Well, I do get all that, and of course, Mike, if you're watching, I realised I wasn't comparing like with like. I was just talking about in my particular case. So with my cars and with my bikes are actually more expensive to run than the cars. I realise that's not the case in everybody's case, but there we go. The point I was making though, and surely the point still holds true, is that buying and running a motorcycle is an expensive game. It's not a cheap form of transport that people might think. That was the point I was trying to make, Mike. But thanks for your letter anyway. I'm just chuffed that somebody read my column, so that's brilliant. Alrighty, next up then on this one. And this, I can't remember what I picked out of these papers actually. It's a little bit of a surprise for me here when I read this. So this is John McGuinness. He has a regular column in Motorcycle News, and he's got here, the hairy arse types won't like it. He's talking about the new Harley Davidson adventure bike. I don't know if you've seen this picture before. Harley are due to bring out all sorts of new models and trying to appeal to new demographic for their bikes, really, and this is their adventure bike. It's just incredible, isn't it? I think this makes the Suzuki Katana look good. Who on earth is going to like that? I don't know. If you like the look of this bike, I'd be really interested to hear. The front of it reminds me, I don't know why, but of one of those one bar electric fires you used to get. Do you remember? There was some had too. You know those little electric things that you poke your finger and you get electric shot when you're a kid. It reminds me of that for some reason. I don't know why. But there we go. I don't know when these are due to come out. These pictures have been doing the rounds now for probably 6 months a year. So at some point we might see one break cover, but who on earth is going to buy that lardy looking bike? I'm sorry, Harley. That one I just do not like the look of, but there we go. So I agree with John McGuinness on that one. I don't always agree with everything he says in his column, but in this case I think he's right. Alrighty, swiftly moving on. Supersport Class Divide. This is another one of these in-depth MCN 250 reviews that I love, where they compare two different bikes on exactly the same route, a 250-mile route. So they give them a good old try out on British roads. So it's a good review. This they've pitted the Ducati Supersport S, a bike I'm going to be riding all next week, by the way, off on a tour in Italy, against the Honda CBR650R, a bike I haven't ridden yet, but I hear nothing but good things. I've seen some reviews of the 650, and as I say, they've all been glowing on it. So it looks like it's a great bike. I really want to get myself a ride on these. I've been talking to Honda about whether I can get one of those as a long-termer as well, and it looks like I might be able to do it. Whether it'll be this year, I'm not sure. Hopefully it will be, but it might be autumn until you see me on one of those. But yeah, like to ride one of those. Have ridden the Supersport S. Let's see what the conclusion was. And what you've got to consider here is, whilst the bikes superficially are in the same sort of class, middleweight sporty type bikes, the Ducati is nearly 14 grand. The Honda is under 8 grand. So it's a massive difference in price. What is the difference in conclusion? I don't know. I can't remember what it said now. It's a while ago since I read this. So here we go. They've given the Honda 4 out of 5, and they've given the Ducati 3 out of 5. Isn't that interesting? So they think the Honda's the better bike out of the two. Definitely, from a point of view of value for money, it's got to win. I can't really comment because, as I say, I haven't ridden the Honda yet. It looks nice. I like the look of the display on it. It looks like a nice bike. I'm sure it's great, so looking forward to giving that one a go. When I rode the Ducati, I was a little bit... I only rode it as a first impressions review. That video is around if you want to go back and look at that. I'll put a card somewhere. But it didn't blow me away. As a Ducati 899 owner, Panigale owner, I love that bike. I thought this was going to be a little bit more sporty feeling. It was a little bit meh. But I might change my mind next week when I ride it for a good few days in Italy. So I'll come back to you on that one. Alrighty, so that was that. Next story. So this is another story on the Katana. Actually, this is they've now actually emptied and have been out and ridden it. Again, some different angles of the bike here. This one from the front quarter here looks okay-ish, I think. But again, like I said before in part one, this isn't a bike that does it for me. I don't get the heritage of the bike. It's sort of before my time, the original Katana. So I'm not bought into all that side. As a relatively new rider compared to the original Katana, I've only been riding for like the last 10 years on this go. This isn't a bike that appeals to me. That said, as I say, from this particular photograph, it looks quite interesting. It has got a 1000cc engine. I'm sure it's an absolute bruiser. I want to have a go, and I'll reserve my full judgment on it then. But certainly, Michael Neves, somebody who I thoroughly respect as a bike reviewer, he loves it. So there we go. So that's been broken cover now and has been ridden. Alrighty, the next paper then. This is this week's MCN. 6 stories here to go through. So first thing I've pulled out here, Aprilia RSV4 goes full throttle. And this is... what they're saying is a hand-built X model, the lightest and most powerful Aprilia ever. They're only going to make 10 of these, and they're going to cost, surprisingly, £34,000. It's a track bike only. It's 165 kilograms dry, so quite light. 221 brake horsepower, so very powerful beast. As I say, intended for track use only, so rich track gods only need apply. The thing that surprises me about this is its price. As I say, normally these kind of one-off builds, I know they're 10, but you know what I'm saying, low volume, are usually sort of 50, 60 grand, but 34 grand for this, amazing. I imagine, given they're only making 10, they're probably all sold out. So, in fact, it says here, orders open at the end of April, so they're not sold out yet, but I imagine they'll be snapped up very, very quickly. But having just ridden the Aprilia Tuono, my reviews of that bike are going up at the moment. I really like that bike, so I imagine the RSV4 normally is a beautiful bike. This one will be even more incredible, so I think it looks great, and yeah, love to ride an RSV4, just a normal one at some point. So Aprilia, if you're listening, let's have a chat about that. Alrighty, next story then, pulled out from here. Oh yeah, another one to do with, well actually this is specifically a London story. London Lifeline for older bikes is what it says here. Now you may or may not be aware, but on April the 8th, the London Mayor is introducing this new ultra low emission zone for London. And it means that if you've got a bike that doesn't meet Euro 3, i.e. is before 2007, you're going to have to pay an emissions charge whenever you take your bike into London. Ridiculous idea, but anyway, there we go. But this enterprising company called Riverbank Motorcycles have set up a test now, which means if you have got a bike that falls into that category, you can take your bike along, they'll do an emissions test, and if it passes the ULZ emissions criteria, they'll issue you with a certificate, and that means you'll be exempt. So if you ride into London on a regular basis, you've got a bike that at the moment is pre-2007, so you'll have to pay the ULZ charges, ULZ charges, then go and get your bike tested here. If it passes, it's a one-off fee, as I say, 175 quid, and then you won't have to pay the charges anymore. So great that they're doing that. It is supported by TfL. It is an official thing. It's just that, of course, TfL haven't tested every pre-2007 bike to see what the emissions are, so you can do yours as a one-off here. So well done, Riverbank Motorcycles. an enterprising lot, obviously. I'm sure they get lots of people go for these tests, but seems like a great thing if you are riding into London regularly and you think you might fall foul of that. Alrighty, just thought that was worth mentioning. Next one, beware false recoveries. This is the latest scam when it comes to bike thefts. Now, MCN are saying here that thieves are posing as recovery staff. So they're bringing vans that look like RAC or AA vans or bona fide recovery vehicles, and boulders brass in high-vis kit, wheeling bikes into the back of the vans. And when people are saying to them, hang on, you know, should you be taking that bike, they'll show them a text that says they've got to go and pick the bike up, and of course the text is false. So very difficult to tell who the true guys are and who they're not. So that's the one thing. So that's one way of removing stolen bikes that they're using. And then the other thing is some criminals are actually getting the real RAC and AA to go and recover bikes that aren't theirs. Another scam. So just highlighting it so you're aware of it. I'm not sure what we can do about it. I'm not sure how you mitigate or fight against this, but it's something else that's going on in this cruel old world of bike theft that we have this problem with, particularly in London, but the UK generally, and possibly in other parts of the world as well, I don't know. But yeah, so if you do see a recovery going on of a bike and it looks a bit tricky, it might be worth maybe giving the police a call and just letting them know you think there might be a theft underway, just spreading a bit of awareness on that one. Alrighty, next story here. Searching for the genuine article, another one of these MCN 250 comparison tests, which I like so much because I just think they're proper real-world tests on real-world roads here in England. And they're pitting up the Triumph Street Twin against the Yamaha XSR700, both bikes that I have ridden incidentally, and both bikes that I like a lot. What did they say was the top? Let's have a look. They've come out 4 stars each, surprise, surprise. I've said they've given them both 4 stars each, but when you actually read the text of this article, as I did do earlier, they actually preferred the Triumph, oddly enough. What they didn't like about the Triumph, I think, were the wheels, which are the cast wheels, and I tend to agree. But having ridden both bikes, I do agree with them, actually. The XSR700 didn't do it for me so much. The XSR900, that's a different kettle of fish, that's an amazing bike. But the XSR700, no, these two, I'll probably go for the Triumph Street Twin as well, so I agree with you, MCN, on that one. Alrighty. Penultimate story here, a classic adventure. Now this is the Moto Guzzi V85TT, stands for Tutto Terreno, which means all terrain, I believe. And this is a bike that's getting lots of coverage at the moment on social media and in the press, as you can see. It's what Moto Guzzi are saying is the first retro-inspired adventure bike. Well, I think maybe Triumph might have something to say about that with their new Scrambler 1200, but nevertheless, it's a sort of a retro-inspired adventure bike. It looks unusual. It's got the big old V-twin engine, so you've got the cylinders poking out the side. You either love or hate that. I think I quite like it, actually. I've never ridden a Moto Guzzi of any type, so I can't really comment on how it's going to ride. Maybe I'll be able to get hold of one somehow. But just wonder what you thought of the looks of this. I'd like to go on one just because I think it's an unusual looking machine. And when I say unusual, that's kind of code word for ugly, because to me this really does look like an ugly duckling again. I know what it is, this set of papers. There seems to be a lot of ugly bikes in it. But this one really does look like a duck, don't you think, with eyes and a beak? What do you think? It might be a lovely bike to ride, but the looks are going to have to win me over when I see it in the flesh. 229 kilograms, 853cc V-twin, so it's competing itself or pitting itself against things like the Triumph Tiger 800 and the BMW F850GSs. It's in that sort of category. 10,899, so similarly priced as well. Just a matter of whether you like the looks of it, I guess. Interested to see what you think. As I say, lots of coverage out there at the moment on this bike. Doesn't do it for me. What do you think? All right, and then the last story before we get on to parish notices and a bit of news about what's going on TMF. Here is Richard Newland, who's the deputy editor of MCN, and a guy I've met a few times, really nice fella. He's the fella actually that commissioned my little column that goes in MCN every 4 weeks, so thank you, Richard. Reason why I point this out, he's gone for his latest long-term bike. They get to keep a bike for a year at MCN and properly put it through its paces. He's gone for the R1250GS Adventure. Great choice, Richard. I love this bike when I rode it. If I had unlimited cash and I want to replace my GS, I'd probably replace it with one of these. It's a lovely, lovely bike. His initial thoughts are, he's got some pluses and minuses. He's saying he thinks the TFT is brilliant. Completely agree with you there, Richard. He's saying, why don't the switchgear have lighting behind them? Completely agree with you there again. Only KTM, I think some of the newer Triumphs do that as well. Why don't BMW? In the olden days, where he didn't have particularly complicated switchgear, he didn't need it. But these days, you know, there's a multitude of buttons on there. They will eventually get into muscle memory, but at night time, it'd be great if they were lit up. So a miss for BMW there. He loves the engine, the 1250 with the shift cam. Agree with you there. And he also likes the keyless setup. I'm not so sure about that. Keyless ignition is a problem that didn't need solving as far as I'm concerned. I don't have any keyless bikes. Whenever I've ridden keyless bikes, I've kind of got used to them over time, and it seems okay, but it's not something that, you know, it's not a deal breaker. It wouldn't make me buy a bike. I don't give a monkeys either way, really. And in fact, in some ways, it's like one more thing to go wrong, or there might be a use case where it doesn't work, so perhaps I'd rather actually have a key. But anyway, really interested to see what Rich thinks of this bike over the next year. I've got a prediction he's going to absolutely love it because it's a brilliant bike. All right, that's it for the news review. So I'll give you a bit of news about what's going on the Missenden Flyer over the next couple of weeks. So a couple of notices here that I just want to bring to your attention. First thing is, must say thank you to my sponsors, in particular Custom Fit Guards as usual. These are the people that make these little orange earplugs that you see me using from time to time, on all the tours in particular. I got them in orange, by the way, because if they fall out of your ears when you take your helmet off and they drop on the road, you can see orange well. So if you're going to get some Custom Fit Guards, then go for the orange rather than the black would be my advice, but don't tell me how I know that. Anyway, so thanks to those guys for sponsoring this video and my live streams. And also I did want to say a big thank you as well to Canary Motorcycle Tours. They've come to the end of their period sponsoring the channel. Thank you for being on board for the 6 months that you have. Really enjoyed coming to the Canary Islands and riding with you guys. I'm hoping to come down again maybe at the back end of this year or early next, and maybe we can do some more with the sponsorship. But thanks very much for your support for the channel over the last 6 months. Do go and visit those guys if you fancy some winter riding, some amazing rides out there in the Canary Islands. Then check out Canary Motorcycle Tours. Great bunch down there. Right, coming up on TMF then. Next 2 weeks between now and my next live stream, got more on the Aprilia RSV4 Factory. Love that bike, so I've got my in-depth review. Well, I've got various rides on that one coming up, so look out for that if you're interested in that bike. Something a little bit more unusual, I've ridden the Hanway 125cc Scrambler, and again, this is one of these bikes that sort of goes under the radar. You don't get much coverage of this, but this one surprised me. I liked it, so that's coming up soon. I've got more kit reviews as well. I haven't done a kit review for a while, but a few people have been asking me for some reviews on bits and pieces they've seen me using, so I've got some kit corner stuff coming, and I've got some more bog standard vloggage and lots more besides as well over the next couple of weeks. And then next time I get to speak to you like this will be my next live stream. That's currently scheduled for Monday, April the 15th at 8 PM UK time. So make a date, a note of that if you would. It'd be great to have you join me live if you can. Once again, Monday, April the 15th at 8 PM UK time, my next live stream. I've got a bit of a new setup for live stream as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. Alrighty, that's it for this month's bike news. Hope you've enjoyed that, and look forward to speaking to you next time. Until then, this has been the Missenden Flyer. Cheerio.